I am Jayaprakash Narayan. I represent Foundation for Democratic Reforms and Lok Sabha movement, non-partisan movement for political governance and democratic reforms, absolutely above parties, above partisanship. We have an impressive track record in the country. I don't want to go beyond that. If you wish, you can Google us and so on and so forth. To my left is Sri Krishnamurthy, a distinguished former Chief Election Commissioner, a man who upheld great constitutional values and integrity. To my right is Dr. M. Govindarao, a very distinguished economist and an expert on federal finances, union state finances, and member of the 14th Finance Commission. To his right is a member of your fraternity, my dear friend, Maithili Kusnarma, formerly editorial position in Times of India and later I think Financial Express and later freelance, very dear friend. I'm grateful that she joined us. And to the left here is Mr. Surendra Srivastava, a valued colleague in the Foundation for Democratic Reforms and Lok Sabha movement. The reason why we are here with you, I'll briefly mention and then a brief presentation and then the distinguished dignitaries here will make a few comments and then we'll take questions. We believe that India is poised for reasonably good economic growth rate thanks to two factors. The first is successive governments since 1991 have paved the way, built the foundations of infrastructure, better fiscal management, delicensing of industrialization, dismantling the old license permit quota raj, unleashing the productive energies of the country, promoting competition and choice, and in general enhancing productivity and efficiency in the country. But the second factor, perhaps even more crucially, global climate is favorable to us. The world is afraid of China and China's rise, whereas they see India as a relatively speaking a soft power, which would be much more conducive to global public good. And we have an opportunity. But this economic growth is not our birthright. It is available, but it's not something that will happen automatically no matter what we do. The reason why in a national roundtable, a group of very eminent experts across the country from a variety of fields, from political leadership, economists, public policy makers, public intellectuals, thinkers, and eminent journalists and editors. We all came together to discuss one impending danger to the country. There are many problems, but some problems are very, very critical, and if you don't address them, India will have no possibility of economic growth in the next 2 or 3 decades. It's as simple as this. It's a matter of life or death for the country. I'll give a brief background, then we'll do a presentation. The government employees of India, they constitute 3.2% of the workforce of India. The total number of employees in government, they constitute 3.2% of the workforce. Their pension burden, pension alone, is taking away 18% of the total government revenues in India. 18% of revenues only for 3.2%, only for pension. I'm not talking about their salaries, other things. World over, we have pension systems, social security systems. Typically, 100% of the workers in the country, includes journalists, cameramen, manufacturing workers in the private sector, service sector workers, everybody. Near 100% of the people get social security or old age pension, but they take away only 15% of the revenues. 15% of revenues and near 100% workers. 18% revenues, only 3.2%. And that's not all. In those countries, that pension is funded. The money is put away by the employee and the employer. In America, we have what is called payroll taxes, 6.2% by the employee, 6.2% by the employer. If it's government, government. If it's the private sector, if it's somebody, private. Everybody from Bill Gates to Bill Clinton to ordinary worker to government employee. They all have the same framework. And therefore, the pension is paid not from the tax money, but from the accumulated pension fund. Maithili is telling me, and she must confirm to me, that the grand pension after being a senior editor in very eminent national newspapers, she gets now is
after 30 years as a journalist, I get a monthly pension of 1,000. After 30 years as a journalist, we're all the same tribe. I get a monthly pension of 1,798. That's all. You know. So that is, I think, the kind of inequity we have in this country. And that is the kind of inequity we have in the country, and I think very few of us are aware of the kind of inequity. As JP said, if you have 3.2% of the population getting 18% of the revenue, and this 1,798 does not come from government coffers, it is coming out of my own contributions that I have made over the years. So I think we are not sufficiently aware of the inequity in the system, which is why JP, I'm entirely here with JP, to arouse the consciousness of the rest of us, to say that the 97% of the population cannot allow this 3% to take us for a ride. And I think information is the most important thing that we have. Knowledge is power. In the absence of knowledge, we have no power. So this is JP's job, to give us the knowledge, to empower us to fight for what is our right.
So, the grand total of annual pension that she is getting, Maithili is getting, is about 21,000, 22,000.
Yes.
You know, a state government employee, I am actually citing real numbers. Annual pension is average, I am talking about average. Across the spectrum, there are so many people. Average pension is 6,40,000 rupees. Maithili, you joined the wrong job. And it's not funded. It's going out of the exchequer, taxes. And if this continues, very soon there will be no money left for anything. Already, if you take the salaries, pensions and interest, in many states, the average is 121% of the government's own revenues. 121% of the government's own revenues is going away in salaries, pensions and interest payments. If you take the total revenues including Government of India transfers, it is still about 80% of the total revenues already. It will reach 200%, 300%, 500% of the revenues. Not in the distant future. Some of us here are a little age, therefore we will not see that day, but almost all of you will see that day, 2041. It will be 220% of the world revenue. 2050, it will be 294%. So there is an imminent fiscal disaster waiting to happen across the country. In 2004, in Vajpayee government, Yashwant Sinha as finance minister, he started today, he participated in this online, in our national roundtable. The government introduced by unanimous consent in parliament and across the country, all parties came together, introduced a new pension system, which is contributed very much like America, Britain, France, Germany. Employee puts X money, government puts X money, but now it's put away in a pension fund, from that you draw pension. So a sustainable pension only for the new recruits. People who were there earlier already in government, they'll continue for the next 50, 60 years, the old pension scheme, there's nothing much we can do, but at least from then onwards. 90 years it went off very well. Except West Bengal, all states embraced it. Manmohan Singh government, which came later, aggressively pursued it. Dr. Manmohan Singh, Montague Singh Ahluwalia, he participated today, Montague Singh Ahluwalia, in this national roundtable. Then Dr. Rangarajan and Mr. Chidambaram, finance minister, they pursued it very vigorously and brought all states together, across parties. Except West Bengal, everybody embraced it. Last 2 years, the reason why we are compelled to come together and meet you all and make a passionate appeal is, last couple of years, 5 states went back. Punjab, Himachal Pradesh, Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand. One more state is vaccinating, Karnataka. Some more states, major parties like Madhya Pradesh, Telangana, they are offering old pension system. Already working contributory pension system They are seeking to replace by old unfunded pension system, knowing full well there is a fiscal disaster waiting to happen, because it will not happen today. It will happen after 2 years, after 10 years, 15 years. Who knows who will live with that? That is the attitude. Jawaharlal Nehru said, and I think that is the standard for us, if India wins, who loses? If India loses, who wins? We can do anything within certain boundaries, but if what we are doing is going to destroy India, I think there has to be a stop somewhere. That's the spirit in which we met. What we are appealing is as follows. Today there is a broad consensus on some issues. That old pension system, unfunded pension system, is going to be an unmitigated fiscal disaster. There is no if, there is no but. There is a unanimous conclusion of all the distinguished economists and scholars. The second one, the union government constitutionally has a duty to make sure that the financial stability of India and the credit of India are protected. The third is, we have to reconcile the employees' legitimate concerns. Employees have a problem, they're part of us, they're part of our country, we respect that. We cannot fight against our own troops. There are legitimate concerns. For instance, if the fund is put away in a pension fund, if we invest it privately, supposing all the money disappears, what will happen? Therefore, I think there is some kind of a program where a guaranteed pension can be issued. But as long as it is funded, it's not a burden on the next generation taxpayers, that is fair and reasonable. Also, you can protect the cost of living. Now, if the prices are going up to that extent, you must provide for that. Already some states like Andhra Pradesh are attempting that, many other states are looking at that. Because it cannot be this or that. We have to find a solution which does not hurt the future and reasonably satisfies the employees. Whatever we do, whatever program we have, it must be fully funded today. Some states have gone for old pension system. States have a sovereign right. If the people elect them, they get a mandate, so be it. But they cannot burden the next generation giving a promise today from which future governments cannot come back. Because that is guaranteeing a fiscal destruction is finished. The presentation will show you some of the stark numbers, we'll be very quick about it. And therefore, we have to figure out a mechanism by which we can protect the future. And while price increases must be reflected in increase in the pension, that's reasonable. Each time a pay revision commission comes, you cannot jump up pension also several fold. So much so, the employees in private sector doing the same job today, they are getting only half or one third of the pension of the retired employees who worked in that capacity 30 years ago. Now, that's not something India can afford. If I get 10 lakh rupees a month, somebody gives me, I'll be happy. Nothing wrong with that. But that's not something Indian taxpayers can afford. Therefore, what we are appealing is 3.2% people cannot be sustained by 97% people. At the cost of 97% people's future in a desperately poor country, we are now yielding to the short-term temptation to somehow get into power, hoping that this extra vote will get us power, because the rest of the 97% people are silent, weak, unorganized. As opposed to 3% who are vocal, strong, powerful, organized. The political parties are afraid of the 3%. They know that they can take the 97% for granted. One last word. This is different from the short-term welfare measures parties are offering, all kinds of free things. In a poor country, you must mitigate poverty. You must help the poor. And that money is going to a large number of poor people, and in the country overall, the efficiency of delivery of welfare schemes is improving. Earlier, 20-30 years ago, we used to debate all the time leakages, wastage, etc. But now, because of digitization and other things, states and union are doing a good job of delivering. And the per capita money given is very small still. And any government can restructure it. It's not a legal, long-term, permanent liability. And it is funded today. It is not a promise without payment. Therefore, this is different from the old pension system. So our appeal is to you and through you to the people of the country and to the political parties with great humility. We respect the political process. We respect the parties. Parties represent billions of people, their ambitions, their aspirations, their dreams. We are not people who would go and abuse political process, elections or parties. We are a democracy. However imperfect we are, we must respect the democratic process. So our appeal is, please look out for the 97% of the people of India. Please do not yield to the demands, unreasonable demands of 3% or 3.2% at the cost of the 97%, because a destruction of India is inevitable. I am not, those of you who know me, some of you may know me, I am not prone to hyperbole. Never in my life. I never exaggerate. So if people who are very sober, who speak in very mild tones, who are totally non-partisan, who have a proven record, if they are saying this, I think we will be wise to listen. If we are conditioned every day about who will win and who will lose in this constituency, and that obviously engages attention, we reduced all politics to 2020 cricket match. Cricket is engaging, interesting, but it's not life. This is life. In a country where 82% of the people are unorganized sector people, without a monthly wage, where the noted, distinguished journalist is getting 2,000 rupees, less than 2,000 rupees a month, we have to have a sustainable method. And that is our powerful plea. We appeal to you, go into numbers, cross-check it, double-check it, talk to any economist of note, talk to significant politicians who have public responsibilities in any political party privately, do your own checking, but please, please let the people of India wake up. The stakes are extraordinarily high. For those of us sitting here, except that young lady and this young man, we won't have another 25 years left or 30 years left. Personally, we have nothing to lose. But the country is going to lose irreversibly. Irreversibly. If this one chance of economic growth and reasonable prosperity for the people of the country, and therefore democratic maturation that is denied to us, I shudder to think of what will happen to this country, because many of us for a lifetime dreamt of an India where everybody has a chance. The poor can fulfill their potential. We can eliminate avoidable suffering. These are not dreams which are beyond our reach, but we have to act with sense.
To wake people up to the injustice of the entire system. Thank you very much, and please do listen to JP. He's one of the few people we have in the country who has taken a political view for the good of the country. There are very few such people. Thank you very much, JP.
Thank you, ma'am. India has a reasonable chance. Politics apart, let's not go into politics. We have a reasonable chance because of 30 years of government's actions and global situation. 6.3, 6.4%, which we could do better hopefully, but let's not bank. Already, this is committed expenditure as a ratio of the state's own resources. Some states are at 206%, that means the tax realization X, they are already spending more than 2x on salaries, pensions and interest without doing a thing for a citizen. Already. Average is 121%. Some states are 206, 171. And you can see some of the states which are already at 200, 170 background, they are the ones aggressively pursuing or continuing with the old pension system. Himachal Pradesh, West Bengal, Punjab. You can see the list. Next please. If you take the total revenues including Government of India transfers significant amount of money. More than 10 lakh crores in terms of constitutional devolution, another 8 or 9 lakh crores in terms of centrally sponsored schemes. Then, even then it's about 80%. About 63% on average, some states have reached 84% already. Now, in a few years' time, they will be crossing 100% of even this, of the total figures. Next. Union government doesn't have money either. There are many people in the media also and political parties say, Government of India, government doesn't give us. Union government is even more bankrupt. This is the reality. If you take the total committed expenditure, that is salaries, pensions and interest rate, and transfers to states, because though the money is raised by Government of India, the money goes and they have no control over the expenditure. Already, you can see union expenditure as a ratio of union's net revenue after centrally sponsored schemes and transfers. Already, union's expenditure is 115% lowest, it went up to 173% during the height of COVID because revenues were low and expenditure was high. Next please. If you take the states, what's happening over a period of time, you may say, look, tomorrow revenues will increase, India will grow, therefore it will not be a problem. Not true. 30 years, from 7.9% of the total resources, the states have now come to 27%, threefold increase as a ratio, taking into account increased revenues, the pension burden alone. If you take out the total revenues from 4.7%, again threefold increase, 14.3%. So even as revenues are increasing, the pension expense is increasing much faster than revenues. None of it is manufactured. Everything is verifiable. You have, I think, in a kit given to you, all this data, please verify, cross-check. Next please. Government of India, if you take only from 2004, ever since the new pension system has come into effect, the pension burden has gone up from 7.9% to more than doubled already. This is only in 17 years. Next please. In 17 years, states, it increased 11-fold in absolute terms. The pension burden of the states together increased in 17 years 11 times. Next please. Government of India in 9 years, for which we have data, it increased threefold in just 9 years. Next please. Other countries, I already explained to you, other countries all have the system. After all, having dignity and security in old age is a very natural thing. But they fund it, they spend 15%, except France, which spends up to 21%. But 100%, near 100% people get it, and it's not a burden on the future. In United States, for instance, per capita income is $70,000. Average pension is about $17,000 annual for Social Security. Whether it's Bill Gates or somebody else, average, this is what they get in. In India, I already mentioned to you, per capita income is 1,92,000 rupees. Across the country, it is 5,40,000 pension alone, almost 3 times. Some states, 6,50,000. This is the reason why there is so much of a distortion in expenditure. Next please. Andhra Pradesh has done a detailed study. They came out also with a guaranteed pension scheme to address the employees' concerns at the same time protecting the future. They did a detailed study of what will happen if you take up old pension system. Almost all states are in the same picture. The other states have not done this study, so this gives us an idea of what is going to happen if you go back to the unfunded old pension system. The first one is the share of state revenues. Today it's 121%. It will go to 745%, 7 times. By 2050, it will be 3 times. By 2040, it will be more than double. As a share of total revenue receipts, it's already at about 68%. 68. It will go to 120 by 2040, 165 by 2050, 463% of the total revenues, only pension burden or committed expenditure, salaries, pensions and interest. Fiscal deficit, that means basically the money you have to borrow that year because you don't have the money. You're spending more than you have. That is fiscal deficit. You can go into other things, but it's the money you borrow in any year. It's now at 3% because there are fiscal rules. It will grow to be 4.8%, 6.1% if I'm not mistaken. Yes. By 2050 it will be 8.1%. Our norm is no more than 2.5%, it must be brought down further. And by the end of the century it will become almost 11%. These our pensions will actually be disbursed. This is a theoretical exercise because well before the stage there will be complete collapse of the country. Debt GDP, already AP is at 38, actually it's 43, 45 at their as usual off-budget loans, but 38 officially stated. It will grow to be 107% by 2050. The norm for the states in India is 20%. We already crossed 20 in most states. And it's going to be 211% by the end of the century. Next slide. So this is that burden currently already, 20% with most of the states crossed. So rest of it I already explained to you. always saying is let there be a hybrid program to address some of the employees, for instance, are worried if the money is put in the stock market or something, if it collapses, what will happen? It's a reasonable concern. We can give employees the freedom. We can guarantee a certain float level that you can't go below that. There are ways of doing it. Without, but as long as it is funded today, not tomorrow. Because employees, I repeat, I was an employee of government. I worked in government. My father was a government employee. My brother was a government employee. So we are all part of that. It's not a war against employees. It's a war for the future of our country. Consciously, deliberately, after a lot of deliberation, put provisions in the Constitution because I'm using the words used in the Constitution, the financial stability of the country and the credit of India, they are indivisible. They are not about this state or that state. The country is a whole. We are all great federalists and supporters of decentralization and states' rights. We believe in that. But that cannot be at the cost of fiscal destruction of India. Therefore, they have an overarching framework to protect India's future, like we have Reserve Bank to protect the currency value, like we have Finance Commission to take care of the union state transfers. So, this is not a central state issue. This is a country's issue. You can't have one rule for the union, one rule for the state. Only one point, broad point I want to make is, whatever is done in line with what we are urging, there must be an independent mechanism. The moment a government in Delhi does it, if Congress is in power in Delhi, non-Congress parties say, no, you are discriminating. If non-Congress, BJP is in power, non-BJP, non-NDA parties, they will come back. That will not serve us. Therefore, there must be an independent, transparent mechanism which cannot be manipulated politically. Many countries have that. United States has Congressional Budget Office to come out with the numbers, etc. Very hard numbers. Any program suggested are taken up. First, Congressional Budget Office studies it. Britain has Office of Budget Responsibility. Any program of government, the tradition, they first refer to OBR, and only when OBR gives a report will they talk about it. The former Prime Minister, the lady who was unseated by Rishi Sunak, she did not do it. One of the reasons why her government was fell down. In one case, they refused to do it. So there is a very strong traditions of the legal backing. Australia has a similar system. So we should have something like that. And even the rules regarding raising of debt by the union government in Article 293, I'm sorry for being technical, that must not be handled by the government as a political entity. While the norms are laid down by law, they must be administered or implemented by an independent organization. Like Finance Commission is doing a credible job in the country. Election Commission has been doing a credible job. We can figure out how to do it in a non-partisan manner, create this body. But that body must have the power, not the elected governments we are on a day-to-day basis. So it must be taken above partisan politics, above union-state struggles. So we have two paths today. Just as in 1991 we had two paths. And we were lucky that across the country there was a consensus and we took one path, and at least India's fiscal integrity was saved and we had some measure of success. A lot more needs to be done. Today, this single issue, old pension system unfunded for a small number of people at the cost of the rest of the country, that is going to be a defining moment in the history of our country. We can take any one path to fiscal ruin and destruction, another path to continued growth and hopefully a better future for our children. Next, please. I end with this. He is a former Treasury Secretary of Britain. He said this very thoughtfully. 40 years ago, I remember vividly. It's always been difficult anywhere in politics, all over the world, to reform because of the slow rate of social payoff compared to the short-term political costs of change. That is the context in which we are discussing. It's not easy. Politicians have a very difficult task of pleasing the voters. But unless we encourage the parties to do the right thing, unless the people, the 97% people wake up and understand what they are losing, it will be always 3% winning at the cost of 97%, and our blaming politicians will not help us. So with great humility, we appeal to the political parties. You have done a great job in the past 30, 40 years, and even 75 years, in the organization of states, about language issue in the country, about constitutional institutions, peaceful transfer of power, economic reform, food production in the country, food self-sufficiency, GST, many things by consensus, we came together and safeguarded one of the most complex countries' interests. It's not easy to govern India. Please, we appeal to you, we beg of you, come together, help the country. Don't destroy the future of the country for temporary political gains, which may not even materialize.
I point has been very well illustrated by Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan. All that I want to say is today we had a round table discussing the implications of the financial prudence, the need for proper financial prudence in public administration. And I must say that there was a reasonable consensus that we should alert political parties, the public, the government, that there is need for some kind of a control over the profligacy of, financial profligacy of various governments. It is not a fault-finding exercise. It is an exercise to alert the need for taking corrective action. It is not against old pension system or the new pension system. It is for ensuring a proper social security benefit for all within the parameters of financial prudence. I think a broad consensus has been given. I hope you have issued a press note of this, and we have issued the press note. We sincerely hope that the government, the political parties will understand the reality of the situation. The media will certainly contribute to the promotion of the awareness of the problem.
Somewhat technical issue, which doesn't immediately affect you, but affects the whole country, and you will be a part of that. You know, very recent work, a review by the World Bank has shown that in South Asia, when there are elections, on the eve of elections, the expenditure state will increase by 0.5% of GDP. And it is also true that in our country today, we have unsustainable levels of deficits and debt. Our deficit, if you take central and state together, is almost 9% of GDP. And debt is somewhere about 86% of GDP. Which means that our children and grandchildren will have to repay that money and then pay the interest. If on top of it, if you have this old pension system, which will actually transfer the entire burden to the future generation, we are basically burdening the next generation of the enjoyment that we are trying to do, or these 3% of the employees of the workforce, 3% of the workforce are employees. As a proportion of population, what you are smaller. Now, it's not that everybody is doing this. There are a few states which have gone into this, and the other states are catching. There is in one state, if they do announce a series of measures and if a party gets elected to the power, they think that that is the strategy to follow. They don't bother about the future of the country. They simply start, advancing the same thing, saying that employees will get a old pension scheme. Rajasthan today has a debt to GSDP ratio of over 40%. And its interest payments and pension almost takes 70 to 80%. Similarly, case of Kerala. Now, Punjab is already in a very difficult situation. And if these states take, other states also follow. So it is important that there should be a consensus that our children should not be burdened by just enriching some short minority of population. And therefore, I think it is important that there should be a large political consensus to stop this type of profligacy and go on increasing the deficits and debt for the future and to unsustainable levels, as was shown. And in that sense, we had a I think everyone present was agreed that this is the case, including some very important political leaders. And after having agreed, now we have to find a way of how to go about it. Then, in fact, Dr. Narayan mentioned about the Office of Budget Accountability. I mean, we could have a similar institution called the Fiscal Council. The studies in the International Monetary Fund have shown the countries adopting the countries initiating the Fiscal Council have been able to control their deficit and debt in a much better manner, because there is a greater awareness. People get to know. There is a much more greater discussion on the issue, and therefore the governments are careful not to really propagate. And obviously, this is an important area, and I hope you will all agree with this particular thing, or you will all, you'll be instrumental in sort of having more discussion, so that the political parties come together and resolve this issue and have a consensus on the matter. Thank you.
155-page booklet. Then we have a list of participants today and the program that we had. We had also the list of issues which are identified and the questions that were discussed. And I gave you, you also have a press note, and I gave you a broad summary of the discussion and the conclusion today. In addition, just one more thing before I open it up for questions. We appeal to you, not merely for today. It's not about coverage of an event. It's a much, much bigger issue. Maithili told us soulfully what's happening. All of you, all of us are participants. This is just not right. On a sustained basis, unless we mobilize public opinion based on facts, evidence, and rationality and logic, it's very difficult to clearly expect politicians to sometimes work against their own short-term interests. And we appeal to all of you to make it a campaign, a citizens' campaign. It's not anybody's private thing. So what happened is some of us initiated the process, but we have no greater resources, not greater information or knowledge than all. For those who are interested in understanding the issues in considerable detail, there is a website that is launched, refuseops.in, REFUSEOPS, refuseops.in, and people may log on to that for further details, and Foundation of Democratic Reforms or the website. Others will be always at your disposal, because we believe it is the most important challenge facing India today. There are many, many challenges. I am very mindful of that. We worked on many, many challenges. Sometimes it's success, sometimes a lot more needs to be done. But this is a make or break issue. This is a life or death issue for the country's economic future. It's as simple as that. So we appeal to you with great humility to lend your might, your intellectual prowess, your passion, and your ability to communicate, to reach out to people of India on a sustained basis across the